Councilor Rich Blonna. And Rich, we're glad that you're here and looking healthy and well.
Thank you so much. Feeling good. Um, First of all, thank you for accepting our paper and letting us present it. And it was a real pleasure to work with Hayden. I think between the two of us, we spent about 100 hours on this, and it's just the start. You know, we've uncovered more questions than answers. So before we get into the white paper, though, I'd really like to apologize to the residents of the Port Marco Mobile Home Park. In the casual conversations that I had regarding your property, people I spoke to always referred to it as the trailer park. And in my haste, I incorrectly used this term in our white paper. So I really wanted to apologize to all the owners in the Port Marco Mobile Home Park for this insulting language, and I will have the paper edited to include the correct name. So please accept my apologies. Now on to the white paper. The approval of the site plan for the development of a new restaurant in Old Marco brought to light the many problems associated with what we call the reactive nature of urban planning on Marco Island. By design, our planning process is reactive. In other words, our planning department reacts to site development plans that are submitted by developers. Now, our planners are tasked with determining if the plans are in compliance with our land development code, and they do a real good job assessing this. However, our reactive planning often puts the city on the defensive with developers when it comes to upholding the visions of our strategic and comprehensive plans, which we feel are documents that are more nuanced than the LDC. Because we haven't been proactive in creating a concrete master plan for the development and redevelopment of our city, we are often forced to react and fend off attempts by developers to stretch the boundaries of our LDC and compromise the spirit of our strategic and comprehensive plans. Now, I don't blame developers at all for doing this. It's what they do, right? They're constantly looking for ways to push the limits and boundaries of codes in order to fulfill their own creative visions. Now, this is exactly what's happening in Old Marco. Because we have no concrete master plan for the area, developers are creating their own plans to buy up the north end of the island and recreate it into a waterfront enclave of luxury high-rise condos, private marinas, and exclusive restaurants. We are at a crossroads in the evolution of Old Marco and perhaps our island. And we feel we have two choices. We can start to be proactive and craft a bold vision that enhances the character and quality of life of Old Marco and opens up the waterfront to residents, or we can continue to be reactive, let developers take the lead, and hope that their plans maintain the character of the area while expanding access to the waterfront for residents. We believe in the former position, and to start that process, we put together our 10-point plan. To get a better feel for the development and redevelopment of the neighborhood, we've talked to residents, staff, former city councilors, business owners, and the police on the street in Old Marco, and I've used that information along with making several site visits to write this white paper.
Thank you, Councilor Blonna.
Yeah, so Councilor Blonna, is this approximately a 15-minute presentation?
Yeah, roughly.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, I'll try to be as.
Because your 1-minute intro was not a 1-minute intro.
Yeah, a little long-winded.
Okay.
I'll try to make up for that lost time. Thank you to everyone. For the record, Hayden DuBlois, 889 Collier Court, planning board member, I should note, newly appointed after the issue, which I'm sure many folks are here to talk about and I'm here to co-present the white paper with Councilor Blonna. Just two quick things before we jump in. I'm hoping that any questions that may occur to you during the presentation we can hold to the end, because I'm sure some of them will be answered as we progress further. And second, I do want to just thank Councilor Blonna for all of his hard work. For those of you who haven't had the joy to work with him, he is a fierce advocate for Marco and one of the hardest working folks I know, and all that outreach was really spearheaded by him. So I have to thank him. So jumping in, I want to just provide some very brief context on which I'm sure everyone's aware. Marco Island continues to be a magnet for visitors and new residents alike. Not only is tourism thriving on the island, but we've seen an overall increase in residents over the last decade. As you'll note in the white paper we put together, we've seen over 1,000 new homes built on the island over the last decade, plus hundreds of new homestead applications and building permits over the last few years. So that leaves us with strong local economy, but with the challenge of increased pressure and intensity on the island. Nowhere is that more acute than in our only historic district, which is Old Marco. Our comprehensive plan is mindful of this. Policy 7.1.4 explicitly states that the city will protect and enhance the Old Marco district as a central component of the city's historical resources. And that's what we really sought out as a guiding principle throughout this paper. And so we've divided it up into 4 different phases and goals, which I'll go through and elaborate more on. These include providing immediate relief for the residents, improving the entrance to Old Marco, improving the approach throughout Old Marco, and improving the center of Old Marco, all of which come down to better balancing the quality of life of residents and the historical nature of the area with the growth that we've been seeing. Now, we think the key to accomplish this is through parking and traffic solutions. So to get into that, item 1 is in phase 1, which is immediate relief for residents in the area, is an adjustment of parking ratios for new or redeveloped restaurants and drinking establishments in Old Marco. So currently, this would change the current ratios of 1 parking space for every 4 restaurant seats to requiring 1 parking space for every 3 seats for a restaurant. And for drinking establishments, the current ratios are 1 space per 50 square feet indoors and 75 square feet outdoors. That would move to 1 space to a consolidated 40 square feet. This would again only apply to new affected businesses or redevelopments and would likely require an Old Marco overlay district. The reasoning behind this is simply to reduce the pressure and congestion residents face from new restaurants and drinking establishments and require a more balanced ratio that captures the nature and character of the Old Marco area. We can't continue to fit a square peg in a round hole by treating the parking ratios the same in Old Marco as they are elsewhere on the island. In a similar vein, item 2 would adjust parking credits island-wide by removing credits for recycling bins and pedestrian access for new construction and redevelopment. Some of the parking credits in the LDC really aren't tied to parking. I think someone pointed out at a recent city council meeting that we shouldn't have a parking credit for recycling bins until someone can fit their car in a recycling bin, which is an interesting point. And some of these items should be just reasonable expectations of responsible businesses in the community rather than rewards. We'd also like to eliminate swale parking on Palm Street, particularly I would say along the non-commercial side, except during the holiday exemption period. The character of the neighborhood is negatively affected when you have an intense amount of patrons parking on what is essentially residents' front lawn. Item 4, this came up at a recent city council meeting when it was brought to light that a traffic count of the area had not been conducted since 2012. And our comp plan talks about conducting regular traffic counts of arterial and collector streets in the island. And this would propose to do that throughout the island on a quarterly basis rather than on the piecemeal basis that we've seen. Item 5 is simply to continue the recent improved traffic enforcement violations of Old Marco, which is important for 2 reasons. First, people fly down Bald Eagle, especially that part of it. We've probably all seen it, and they also, in many cases, ignore that 3-way stop sign that I'm sure we all know about, that the intersection of Bald Eagle and Palm, roll right on through. Residents living there deserve to be able to walk their dog or go for a bike ride without fear of being injured. So we would want to just simply encourage any continued traffic enforcement efforts that can be completed. Moving on to the second phase, which is improving the entrance to Old Marco.
Let's mention
Yeah.
that the first phase really doesn't involve any cost to the city at all. It's no expenditure.
Yeah, no cost items. Second phase, which is improving the entrance to Old Marco, is around item number 6, which is to add new roadway safety measures and additional parking capacity around the Rose Marina. While this is technically, no surprise to no one, it's not the beginning of Old Marco. It is in many ways the de facto entrance, as it's the last major commercial operation before the boundary of Old Marco begins. Currently, the Rose offers overflow parking on the west side of Bald Eagle. On the
Pointer?
I do actually have a pointer.
I'll point for you.
Great, thank you. On the,
Whoops.
there you go.
Can you point on here?
Oop, you're facing it the wrong way. There you go.
I'm trainable. Okay, so how
Yeah.
come it's not showing on the screen?
It's not visible.
Yeah. Is it visible there? Nope.
Oh,
We know where the
we,
west side
you know where it is. Okay. So there's a desire, I think, by the operators in conversations Councilor Blonna's had to expand the parking capacity into undeveloped lots, on the east side of Bald Eagle, which the Rose already owns, marked with an arrow on your screen. The Rose has also expressed an interest in putting up a real nice promenade area for seating at that location. At the same time, the operators of the Rose indicated they'd be willing to put in some roadway safety measures. So we've proposed adding speed tables, which are a slightly raised section of roadway with reflectors and road strips that alert drivers to the impending crossing. And we're also proposing at that point to begin lowering the speed limit by 25 miles per hour, which I will elaborate more on in just a few moments. Sure, sorry. Get closer to the microphone as well. The next phase focuses on improving the approach throughout Old Marco. The first item here is to extend the pedestrian bike paths all the way to the end of Bald Eagle. This would accommodate cyclists and hopefully encourage alternative modes of transportation rather than just vehicles. Moreover, as we all know, the only bicycle rental shop on the island right now is located in Old Marco. There was a question of the size of the road and the right-of-way and whether or not adding bike lanes would be practical, but that ties right into the next item, which is to adopt the Old Marco parking plan with some contingencies. Now, the Old Marco parking plan, which was attached to an item, the item of this agenda, represented years of hard work that culminated in a proposal in 2019. If adopted, it would improve roadway conditions and add new metered parking spaces, and through the elimination of the existing swales, could accommodate new bike lanes. We're suggesting it be adopted with a handful of contingencies, which I've mentioned, including the addition of the bike lanes, the adjustment of the parking ratios as discussed, the ban on swale parking as discussed, and a reduction in the speed limit throughout Old Marco to 25 miles per hour, beginning back at the Rose. The new meter parking spaces we would gain would accommodate businesses in the area and reduce instances in which folks are parking in condo associations or parking illegally. And with today's technology, you can pay using your cell phone, and there is even the capacity for a discount for Marco Island residents, which would likely be desirable. Now, the final phase revolves around improving the center of Old Marco. This is 2 action items. The first is to facilitate a circular traffic pattern. As everyone here knows, currently the only method of ingress and egress is Bald Eagle. This creates a lot of traffic congestion and potentially unsafe conditions as patrons search for parking, pop in and out during peak season while entering and exiting businesses along this section of the island. This would propose exploring a circular traffic pattern represented by the red arrows on your screen. It would run eastbound on Lee Avenue, which is that northernmost road, southbound via an extended alleyway, and then connect with Care Court, which via Tampa Place, which is the unlabeled street running westbound, would reconnect with Bald Eagle. Obviously, this proposal would involve working with local property owners about either acquisitions or getting right-of-way, and would be a long time horizon rather than an immediate solution. It could also involve partnering with businesses who might be willing to work with us in recognition of the fact that a circular traffic pattern could help future and existing operations. And it's closely related to the very final item and last suggestion on here, which is to explore the creation of a Riverwalk Park around 1219 Lee Avenue, which is the area circled in red. Imagine a riverfront promenade, benches, shaded trees, a great area for residents and visitors alike, as well as additional metered parking capacity that would serve this potential new park, as well as businesses in the local area, helping them with overflow parking. It would reduce future density and intensity and provide a nice vista and additional capacity for parking to also enhance property values and the quality of life of the area. It would also help ease the existing congestion, reducing the likelihood of traffic violations or incidents and making it easier for visitors to find parking so they're not circling around the area constantly. Obviously, this would also involve the acquisition of property, so it is also an exploration item. Together, these 10 items, in our mind, represent a balanced approach to improving the quality of life for residents, accommodating businesses in the area, and managing parking and traffic flow. The sense of urgency we have to preserve the character of Old Marco has never been more apparent than it is today. We appreciate your time and consideration of these issues and would be happy to answer any questions.
I'd like to make one statement before we take questions. We realize the last 2 items would involve a tremendous effort between the public and private sector. And the business owners and the developers in that area are visionaries. They have a vision for that island. They're successful business people. We would hope that they would be willing to work together and work with us to try and do something to make access work for everybody, both them, their businesses, and the citizens and the visitors. So we're willing to try and enter into that conversation if they would be willing to speak to us.